There he
There he
is. All good?
is. How are you doing, mate?
I'm all good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good, thanks. Sorry, I had a bit of a flat then. I was like, I don't know how to actually invite you onto it.
You're right. I didn't leave you stranded for too long there, no?
No, just yeah, I was cracking a few jokes there. It's fine, you know.
I keep the crowd. I should have stayed off for a bit longer.
Yeah, you don't want that. Trust me.
I'll dull it down for you now.
How's your day, buddy?
It's been all right. I said to you before, I did my first run back today. So this is the start of the roll into next year. So yeah, a good day, I
Yeah,
guess, isn't it? The end of like hopefully a lot of like cross training and stuff this year.
definitely, mate. Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of people probably wondering kind of what's been going on. Obviously, you've had a bit of a tough season, really, wasn't it? It was kind of injury after injury, lots
Yeah,
of pushing to get back.
yeah, that was probably the right words, wasn't it? It was like I tried to shortcut on so many occasions to get back to where I needed to be, but
Yeah,
it was always like never quite enough time, I would say. It was always like a battle against it. So now I've got the luxury of it's August and I'm starting getting ready for winter now, so I've got so much time, which is the best thing, and I haven't had that all year.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, mate. And it's like I'm sure people can appreciate. It was a really tough decision, wasn't it? It was, no one's gonna. I mean, obviously it's the elephant in the room, isn't it? Worlds,
Yeah.
you're the champ, and obviously this year it's not going to be yours. But bigger picture, Paris around the corner, isn't it? That's
Yeah,
the
exactly.
it's the right
I
decision, I
think
think.
it was like I got my first injury was back in February, where it was just like we probably speak about it, but it was just like a freak accident, wasn't it? Where I was tired going into stuff, and yeah, like
Yeah,
just that probably snowballed into other things. And there's a point where you kind of realize that you're either gonna get to the start line not in the shape you want to be because you've got to take time away, you can't go on the track because you've got to rehab throughout it, or you're
yeah,
best off drawing a line under it and saying like, well, this year isn't going to go the way I wanted it to be. Therefore, I need to make sure that next year goes better than I hope it could go.
yeah, yeah, definitely, mate. So, yeah, big decision, and like I say, now is it's where it starts again, isn't it? Winter around the
Yeah, this
corner
is
to start building up again.
the summer. The worst bit is the summer training is going to be like the fun bit, and I haven't really got had much of that. So I got to go
Yeah,
back into the grim winter stuff again, which isn't very pretty, is it? But
yeah.
I have to do it sadly.
For those of you that don't know what that looks like, Jake has been working his ass off for the last however many months doing stuff that really in summer is kind of out the window. You've been a lot more kind of prep and rehab type work, haven't you? And
Yeah, so I've
hours and
done.
hours of cross training and
Yeah, that was probably the best bit of not deciding not to race at Worlds this summer was that I could kind of put an end to that as well because it was like being in the gym is not what you do when you get into the sport. It's not what you plan on doing. It's like standing on or working on a cross trainer, just staring out of like a window. You want to be outside running. You want to be training with people. So it was pretty lonely and like you work probably harder being injured than you do when you're not. So it was like the little bits like with you, Andy, where I got your like blood restriction, like cuffs. I had the like complex machine, and it's like even little things like you come home and you've got to do that stuff. It's like you never get to switch off when you're injured. It's always
yeah,
like thinking about stuff 24/7, which when you're fit and healthy, you can like afford the luxury of relaxing a little bit more and switching off throughout the day.
yeah, definitely. I think that's quite a common misconception, is it? When you're injured, people probably think I'll be doing less, but for yourself and other elite athletes, you're doing way more, aren't you? Kind of in
Yeah,
terms of time and spent doing things. It's
yeah. I think I learned that probably early on, which was fortunate for me that injury isn't like an opportunity to have a
yeah,
holiday and just stop doing anything and relax because you'll come back and you'll have the same problems, if not more. So for me, it's always been like, right, you're injured. This is like, it sounds bad, but it's almost like the punishment for being injured. Not that it was anyone's fault, but it's like you have to like realize you've got to work extra hard and it's going to be a lot more unpleasant than it would be if you were running. It's not a chance to like treat yourself to a holiday necessarily. It has to
yeah.
be like time to work hard and do things that are going to be a bit more like challenging mentally.
Definitely, yeah. I wouldn't call it punishment, but there is a cost,
Not
isn't there?
punishment. That's
That's the
the wrong
thing.
word for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So,
it's just like the reality
oh,
of it.
definitely, mate. Yeah. So that kind of leads us on to one of the questions. So there's a big old list, mate. We'll work our way through in what feels like a natural order, I guess.
Yeah, go for it.
And there's questions coming in already anyway. But one of the ones that came up that actually would work quite well there was, what's your typical week look like when you're injured? So what's your kind of rehab training week like?
So recently, I've been in a bit of a different phase recently where I haven't had to worry about keeping fit just because I'm not racing soon. Therefore, it's been a lot more focus on the gym stuff and the rehab stuff. So I've had 4 gym sessions a week these past
Yeah,
few weeks, and I never usually bike because normally I would cross train if I was to choose because it's the most similar to running. It's kind of the same muscle groups, a little bit more similar,
Yeah,
which is what I did all from February through to like March time when I was injured. Then I just did everything on the cross trainer, and
yeah,
I said when I got my like most recent problems, I was like, I can't just be on my own doing that. So that's when I bought a bike and I made it a sociable thing where I'd go out with friends around here and ride a bike outside, trying to stay on, but also like not necessarily spanking it, just trying to relax and enjoy it a bit.
yeah,
But generally, I tried to. My dad would set my cross training, so we'd replicate the running week almost exactly as it would be on the cross trainer. Which the way cross trainer works, the heart rates are the same and the kind of like effort levels the same. So if you were going to do, say, if you're going to do 6 miles and it was going to take like 40 minutes, you'd go and do 40 minutes in a cross trainer. If you're going to do a session of 3 minute, 2 minute, 1 minute reps, you'd go and do exactly the same in a cross trainer. It works out pretty well to be
yeah,
able to complement your running week.
yeah. And I think that's something that sort of came out in your physiology testing, wasn't it? Like your actual fitness, your VO2 max, if anything, slightly improved in it during that time,
Yeah,
which
yeah. That
is
was
quite
the
unusual.
yeah. Like the thing I realized from it is aerobically you can just hit so much harder. So I did more hours on the cross training than I would have been able to do running. So yeah, my
Yeah.
physiology showed that I was ahead of where I was even last year. But the
Mm,
problem is that my skeleton and my body was just
yeah.
not quite there as well.
You can't
So you then
take that on a track, can you?
no, you go back into the track sessions and you miss so much running that your body just starts to break down a little bit again. So again, it's like the time just ran out with it, but it gives you confidence that the cross training has done something is the main thing when you go and do the physiology testing. And the same with the stuff I did with you, Andy, where like my body got back to a good place. It was just I had to do the speed work to then get ready for track
Yeah.
season. That was when it became tough.
Yeah, it was kind of it was always going to be risky, wasn't it? But maybe sort of
Yeah,
end up
you
with
had to do
this.
it though.
Yeah,
It was the main.
absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, showbiz, isn't it?
Yeah, far from.
um, so yeah, cheers, that mate. So kind of on typical. There's loads of questions about your weeks. But so yeah, someone's asking what your typical kind of winter week looks like. So that'd be quite good, I guess, what we're about to do, and then summer as well. So if we maybe
Yeah.
loosely go through the year, I suppose, or what it would look
Yeah,
like.
so like a winter week would be um I don't really run much more than probably about 70 miles in a week. Like I would steady run on a Monday like up to 8 miles. And then we would do drills and like we do yoga on a Monday evening.
Yeah,
And then a Tuesday would be normally like a hill session. So in the winter that's gonna be either like steep hills that are probably gonna be less of them, but obviously like a longer duration, so up to I guess like 75, and then we might do the next week some shorter ones, which are a bit of a less incline and a bit faster, and then we'll
yeah,
do one of your lifting sessions in the evening. And then Wednesday I would do like either a longer run in the morning, a little bit easier, or two like shorter runs, so 2 5s or maybe 110, and then we do like a prehab circuit, which is normally like a combination. It could be yours or it is physio led a lot of the time, where it's not necessarily like big weights or anything like that. It's more movement based and the stuff that say like the physio will identify that I need, which is a little bit more boring, but it's kind of the stuff that keeps you together. Thursday we would either do like a tempo session or again a steady run, and then we'd do sprints and drills in the evening. Friday would be another steady run and a rest. Saturday we do longer grass reps,
hmm
and then again another gym session of yours in the evening, and then Sunday we would long run up to 15 miles, and then normally like an active recovery thing in the evening, like a swim or a bike.
yeah, yeah. So pretty packed in there, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
like say, it's a lot of people. I think people don't realize just how much you guys actually do.
No,
Um,
to be fair, like when it's your job, it's that I've got the fortunate situation where I can do everything I possibly can to recover in between. So it's like when you're doing two things in a day, you're never going into the second one as tired as somebody working
yeah,
like a 9 to 5 would be. Like we're in a pretty privileged position to be able to do that.
I think that's actually a really important point. So a lot of the questions I get as well, to be honest, from people who are kind of working full time, but also like pretty good runners, suddenly kind of breaking into that kind of that field, is around like training. Do I do double days? How much gap do I leave between like gym and a track session or whatever it's going to be? And ultimately, like as you've identified, the thing there is your resources, isn't it? Like, well, how much
Yeah.
resources do you have to recover? So for yourself, you can put in a proper shift in the morning, can't you? You can get in a decent like hill
Yeah.
session, let's say,
Yeah.
and be recovered enough to go in the gym in the afternoon. Yeah, you'll be tired, but if you were to go and, I don't know, spend 6 hours on your feet there working, or
Oh, I
you
see.
know,
Yeah,
it's
like
a
that's.
different kettle of fish, isn't it?
I think there's got to be like a level of adaptability to whatever your situation is, and I would say probably you have more like advice on this, but I would always say that some people probably go in the gym and rush through stuff,
Hmm.
and that not respect the recoveries because they're just trying to get it done. Because if you've had a busy day, which that's just going to end in either you're not getting the quality from the session that you should be
Yeah.
getting, or you're going to end up doing like too much without enough recovery and end up getting hurt as a result of it.
Yeah, definitely, and that's a good point as well. Like within the session, I mean, anything that's like speed and power based, you know, you're looking for quality there, aren't you? Rather than like making something fatiguing and metabolic. And a lot of the time, you'll see people in the gym rushing through those things, you know, banging out sets of cleans and box jumps every 10 seconds and things like that. And it's just you've changed the exercise dynamic there. That's not achieving what you set out to achieve, and ultimately, the level of fatigue that you're creating is way above what it needs to be.
Yeah,
Um, and I know people take the mick sometimes in the gym. You know, we'll be in there for 2 hours, won't we? Kind of working through a session,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. But
that's
it's like
partly down to chatting, but
I know
also, you know,
I'm to blame for
giving it
that,
what it.
but
Yeah,
it's no, like I would say that our gym sessions, like I would say I get the most from, especially when we're in there with you, where it's like you're like trying to push the lifts, like the big lifts, as much as you can. So if you can go a bit heavier on the squats, if you can go a bit heavier on the cleans, like we'll do that.
yeah,
But that's always got to be with the respect of like how much recovery you're getting. It's like you go in probably when you feel ready, and if you don't quite feel ready, I'm sure you would give us a little bit more time to be able to like maximize the quality of the lift rather than make it a bit of an aerobic effort, which you've already had in the morning from our running session anyway.
definitely, yeah. And so there's actually that kind of brings us in nicely. Actually, there's a few people asking about what a typical session would look like, and also how we'd periodize that through the year. So,
Yeah.
do you want me to do that one, mate, or do you
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to?
you go, mate. You go first.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not rocket science, I guess. So what we tend to do, we have quite a concurrent approach. So as Jake's probably mentioned before, we have kind of a methodology of ticking off everything all the time, but in various doses. So in the winter, we'll kind of touch on plyos. It'll be more kind of extensive, lots of kind of higher rep, lower impact type stuff. So things like pogos and kind of more rhythmic drills, that sort of stuff. But the bulk of the session will be kind of around kind of what you'd maybe call hypertrophy type reps. So kind of higher rep strength training, all about building that tissue integrity and getting the muscles, the tissues, everything ready to train essentially. So that would happen for a few weeks. Then we'd shift into more of a max strength focus, kind of really start to push the numbers up, lots of lower rep, kind of heavier stuff, start to introduce kind of power and speed strength work. For example, you know, your cleans, your loaded jumps, that sort of stuff. And there'll always be an element of local conditioning there, won't they? So we'll do kind of hip or core work at the end of every
Yeah.
session.
They're
And
the
those things are
boring stuff,
always
mate.
there.
Those ones, aren't
There was
they?
that.
They're the boring ones, those
The
ones.
boring ones, yeah, they are.
The
But like
boring
as you know,
ones.
they suck the most, don't they? Like
Yeah,
it kicks your ass at the end of a session. But
yeah,
those things are always there, but in kind of varying doses, and through the season, that will fluctuate. And also kind of marry up to your running training as well, won't it? If we look at the season, you know, that's kind of your winter is that base building, that aerobic, that long kind of capacity building, if you like, isn't it? And then as you get closer to summer, we're really sharpening up, going for speed, power, lots of reps, you know, lots of rest, sorry, lower mileage. Kind of the same thing, really, isn't it? And then obviously within that, it does get complicated when there's specific issues, injuries, stuff that we know we need to do for yourself or anyone else.
now, there's stuff I'd say like the way, as you were saying there with it, where you want to feel your best going into a champs like at the peak of summer,
Yeah,
and then the gym that you will always set then is like fast, light movement stuff, which makes you feel like really good. So like the confidence from the gym probably goes in line with the confidence you get from track sessions, where you want to feel like effortless within the gym, as well as
yeah,
effortless on the track when you're about to go and do kind of your like main goal or your biggest aim for the
yeah,
season.
definitely. Yeah. And that's where that, without overcomplicating it too much, that's where we kind of go into that like realization phase and things start to drop away, and all that's left is the sport and the event, isn't it? And
Yeah.
you've hopefully got, you know, peak up here and fatigue down here just at the right time,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
be at
and
your
that's the
best.
sweet spot, isn't it? I would say
Yeah,
that one of the things that changed when I came to you was it's probably again with becoming a bit more professional about it and kind of learning a bit more was that I always used to drop out gym a lot more within the summer, where it would kind of
mm-hmm.
like race season, you want to be as fresh as possible. Whereas like the reality is you'll soon lose the benefits you've
Yeah,
created all winter from your S&C program by pulling it out too quick. So we'll lift all the way through to the end of the season, and then
Yeah.
as soon as the winter training starts, the lifting starts again. There's not really any period where you're not in the gym still. It just changes exercise wise and rep wise, doesn't it?
Definitely, yeah. And that's kind of again a big philosophy thing, really. Like for me, especially if it's worth doing in winter, it's worth doing the whole season. But with a caveat that it has to be, the specific thing for the right reason, the right dosage, and that's the hard bit of S&C within any sport, really. But in a seasonal sport like yours, it definitely is. And the reason behind that, obviously, is as you've identified, those qualities do start to deteriorate. Some quicker than others. If you look at like aerobic fitness, let's say, you could be up to 30 days before that starts to taper off because it's a specific, real kind of physiological change. Things like blood cells and mitochondria, they physically change, whereas things like speed and power, 5 days, 3 days, you're going to start to see a drop off, to some extent, because their neurological qualities, it's nervous system, it's not physical changes, if you like. So, yeah, it is. It's a year-round job, isn't it? We're
Yeah,
lifting
yeah.
and jumping around, doing all sorts of stuff. But
That's what I find. It's crazy where like you can be doing, yeah, like your gym until the last week of the season, have 2 weeks off, come back in the gym, and the DOMs still hit as if you've never been in before, because it's like you lose that. Um, I guess the tolerance to the load of stuff pretty quick, and like
yeah,
your tissue breaks down again. Like you start the whole process. So yeah, I would say like whenever people can't be bothered or like feel as though the gym should be the one thing that gets missed out, it's probably like worth relooking at that and seeing actually like this is a very important. I value it as much as the track sessions and the actual like running sessions within my week. Like my gym sessions are as important as that, so shouldn't be
yeah.
undervalued at any point.
That's good, mate. It's good to hear. There's a few people that are actually asking a lot about kind of the youth side of things.
Yeah.
So if we go backwards a little bit, um, good ones just popped up there. How much S&C and sports did you do when you were younger? So around under 15s.
Yeah, so I think probably one of the biggest things that's helped me as a senior now is the fact I didn't just run throughout my teenage years. I think the fact that I was still playing other sports until 18, so still playing football, like played like rugby a little bit at school. Like I was always doing other things until 18, and I think that just made me a little bit more robust and probably kept me probably like even for S&C wise, like a bit more plyometric, like a little bit more speed and just a bit more, yeah, like able to tolerate stuff the older I get. My first exposure to gym would have been circuits. I think at school we had like an elite athlete like group for across different sports, and we'd come in before school and we'd do a circuit session from that, and
What did
then
they look like?
that led into
Out of interest.
mainly just like real high intensity, like little recovery, like your classic old school, just like med ball throws, like burpees, just like short recovery, like quick
Yeah.
exercises, which would get you like hurting at that age, and especially when you
Mm.
like I was a skinny little twig, like any little bit of strength work, even if it was just body weight and body based, was good enough to get me like a bit stronger. And
Yeah.
then the guy that set it was a rugby coach, and then he introduced us into a little bit of lifting by the time I was in my final year of school. And then it kind of dropped where I was like really well looked after. My mum taught at the school, so she was always like careful about I think what we were doing and stuff, and like helped nurture me a little bit through school. And then when I went to Loughborough, he's not with us anymore, but George Gandhi was the head of the program there, so like proper like
Legend.
legend of a coach. But
Mm.
he just said like go in the gym, do this, and there was a few older guys that kind of like helped us a little bit, but we were never taught how to lift.
Yeah.
And as a result, like I think I could have potentially developed some very, very bad habits from that. But I was fortunate that I then worked with another S&C coach the next year, which kind of corrected the little things I had. But
Yeah.
I would say the worst thing I probably could have done was try to just stick with that and just think that, oh, I know what a squat looks like, I know how it's done. And I would have ended up just with so many knee problems now, probably as a result, or back problems.
Yeah, and it's hard. It is hard. Like speaking from experience of coaching slightly older athletes and stuff, it's hard to unlearn those things because they become ingrained, don't they? And that's your experience. That is your model of a squat. That is your deadlift. That is, whatever it might be. But yeah, there's an interesting point that you said about playing other sports and rugby and things like that.
Yeah.
That's quite an interesting field of research into that sort of thing around youth athletic development. That
Yeah.
diversity of sports, at an early age is really good for predicting kind of who will go on to kind of do really well and or drop out. And yeah, early specialization in a lot of sports is not a good thing. So
Yeah.
it's interesting that that has worked for you as well.
I think there's like a few factors. Like part of it is like I feel like I'm a bit of a social animal and I need people around. And like athletics and running, although you can be part of a club, part of a group and train, it's like you do spend a lot of time running on your own.
Mm.
So for me, I was never deprived of like being in a team sport as well and having people, my mates, like my own age, like around. And I would
Yeah,
have been a bit resentful, I think, if my dad, for example, had said, "Oh, you can't play these other sports because like your running is going to take a hit." Whereas
yeah,
he was always like,
yeah,
"Nah, you'll run like later on in life," because I had enough success that I wanted to do that. But he just never stopped me from doing these things, which I'm very grateful for. And I was also probably getting a bit more mileage without having to do as much training outside of it. So whenever people ask that, how much was
it's
I
true.
training
Yeah,
when I was like 14, it was like I wasn't going out and running probably more than 2 or 3 times a week, maybe like four max, but I was doing a lot
mm.
more like running on pitches and like on courts and stuff like that. So I was probably adding a
yeah,
little
yeah.
bit more training than I realized.
And that's ticking off your high speed running, your kind of change of direction, probably some stuff around adductors, hips that you just don't know what benefit
Yeah.
that's had, do you? And
It's
it's
even like I think like one of my strengths probably as a senior now is my acceleration's okay. Like my acceleration is probably one of my strengths, and
yeah,
I feel as though playing those sports in my teenage years like kept my fast twitch high. It kept me like a bit explosive. Whereas if I'd have just specialised in my running, I think that probably would have been lost a little bit more. Like my dad would have kept me doing, I'm sure, some drills and sprint stuff, but
yeah,
I don't think I would have had the same like change of pace that I potentially have now.
yeah, yeah, definitely. No, that's good, mate. Sticking to the going back in time, you kind of answered it there, to be honest. What did you do on that time? So someone did ask what you did around sort of 12, 13, and sessions and runs. But as you said, it wasn't really sessions and specific runs, I guess, was it? You were more
There was some,
a bit
yeah,
of everything.
sessions. It would have been honestly similar to what I do now, where I would have still done a hill session in winter time, and my track stuff would have been going down to Edinburgh like Athletic Club, where I'd have done once a week probably, and I'd have joined in with groups down there and stuff. But yeah, my only like exposure around like 12, 13 was a lot of time just racing. Like I
Yeah,
raced like as much as I could. So like the cross country leagues and stuff would be every other week. So I'd do that, and then I'd maybe do one other session in the week, and then play like matches and like other sports throughout the week. Otherwise, and I probably took a hit because I was racing against kids that were training a lot more than I would be. But those guys probably didn't make it. A lot of them outside of school age or
yeah.
like much beyond that because they were doing probably so much at that age that eventually it just was a bit much for them. Whereas I always had a lot more to add, and I saw my improvements a lot later on.
Yeah, yeah, and that really does tie into that like youth athletic development philosophy and research now that's coming out that does tend to be the case, isn't it? That your childhood champs often don't then become senior champs, whether it's through injury, boredom, stagnation, whatever it might be. It's definitely a factor, isn't it? And I think that's good advice to anyone out there that's kind of in that sort of age group. Don't sweat the small stuff at the minute. And do lots of things and kind of bide your time, I suppose.
Yeah, there's always some anomalies in there, and like people will look at like one or two athletes and say, oh, if they were this good at 14, 15, like I need to be as good as that. But if you took a spread of every athlete that's ever made like like an Olympic Games or like team or anything like that, you'd probably find that the majority would have not necessarily been the best like kids. It was all about like the development and the progression and having as smooth a line as possible, I would say is what I always looked for. Like just getting better than I was the year before and not having anything that stops your trajectory, like staying as injury free as possible and just not comparing yourself to others at too early an age, I think is pretty big.
Yeah, nice, mate. Really good. Um, Quite a cool one I've got that's popped up here. What's your racing and training mental toughness mindset like? And then, so what's your mentality when it comes to racing,
Yeah.
pre-training, sorry, pre-race and training as well?
So I've always felt as though if you're going to line up on the start line of a race, like you should be doing something to try and win it. So I've never felt as though if I go into a race, I'm there to be a passenger or just make up numbers. So I think, you want to kind of like draw on your competitive instinct that you probably have if you've got into the sport, and that's like I just would like really wanted to win at stuff, and if I didn't win, as long as I'd like given enough and like put myself in a position to. So
Yeah.
that's what I say now. It's like even if I don't win, if I've given myself a chance of winning, then that's the best I could have done. It's always like if you're never seen in the race and don't do anything, but you could have, but you were too scared or didn't want to like have a bad run, then I don't really understand that. It's like it's worth the risk to have like a good outcome, and to win a race, you have to actually physically do something to win that. So you've got to at some point make a move. So that's what I always think about. It's just like, what am I going to do to impose myself on this race? But I'm pretty. I've learned like with my old age now that the training is by far the hardest bit of our
Yeah.
year and of like the whole sport. It's like training is bleak. It's like if you can get through a hard training week, like a hard session, then the racing is kind of the reward for that. It's like one rep pretty much where you just have to go max, like go as hard as you can. By the end, it's
Yeah.
like that's easy compared to going and slugging out like 15 reps on like a miserable day in the rain and stuff. So I've
Yeah.
always
Oh,
felt
true.
that
Yeah.
if I can have good enough sessions, then there's no reason why I can't go out and have a good race as a result. And the best thing that can happen is you make mistakes in races, because as long as you learn from that mistake and you never make it again, then that's like a good thing that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely, mate. No, I like that. You've definitely ruffled a few feathers with your old age comment there, mate. That's
Honestly, I feel it now.
yeah, oh, mate. No, it's a different game nowadays, isn't it? So another one there within that. How do you cope with pre-race nerves? So obviously you were saying that's the easy bit, sort of thing. But when you line up or when you wait, I imagine when you're waiting to be called, do
Yeah,
you have any moments of?
I guess like a lot of people that are probably watching this like have raced and like understand the kind of racing process. But yeah, you warm up for like whatever, like over an hour beforehand, and then they just chuck you in a cool room where you're sat with all your competitors for potentially up to half an hour before not really able to do much, which that's probably the most nerve-wracking bit, because when you're warming up, you're like you've got like not really much stress around you. It's like you just got your music in, like focused on like the drills you're doing, or yeah, like chatting with other people and lots of like people around and stuff. Whereas the cool room is probably the most daunting bit. But
Yeah, I
I
bet.
just kind of learned early on that the only thing you can do is kind of drain yourself a little bit by getting too worked up about it. It's like you will always be nervous and anxious when you're racing, but it's not a bad thing. It means that you care about it. The only thing you have to do is make sure that you don't let that derail what's about to happen in your race. So it's like channeling that energy into like good adrenaline that you can use once the gun goes off, rather than using it as like kind of an overwhelming feeling beforehand. And I think there was a quote we got told before Tokyo, which I liked, which was like, you shouldn't be nervous about like what could go wrong. You should be like excited about what can happen, like what can go really
Mm,
well here instead. So I just try and focus on the opportunity that a race presents rather than potentially bad outcomes. And the less you think about the bad outcomes and the more you think about the good ones, the calmer you should feel and the more kind of like excited and optimistic you should feel.
yeah, that's good, mate. I like that. That's quite a nice quote as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
it's like it just makes stuff pretty clear, doesn't it?
yeah, definitely, mate. Sorry, one that just popped up then that kind of ties into that, which I think is quite a good question actually. What part of running, or I suppose sport maybe, causes your mental health lows and highs?
So like the highest by far is like winning races for me. It's like even a PB, if I had like a massive PB, but I was like third or fourth, like that wouldn't give me like too much of a buzz, because I'd always be like, well, I should have been higher up in the race and stuff. And like winning, I think, is the only thing that gives you that real buzz. Like a medal is obviously a big buzz still, but it's like winning a race is the real high one.
Mm,
Like Worlds last year is probably the biggest highlight I will ever have in the sport, just because it was also the like not expected necessarily going in. I was hoping it could happen, but that's what like made that as big a high as it was for me. Which
I
I
think the
might,
look on your face when you cross the line says it all, doesn't it?
yeah. Well, it's like say for example, if I was to win in Paris like next year, it's like I've I've like won worlds, so therefore I would hope that I could do something like that. Whereas
Yeah,
at that point, like I believed I could, but I didn't expect to at all. So that was like, yeah, massive dopamine hit.
yeah,
The lowest points are obviously going to be, well, it's not even injuries for me, because injuries I've never really been too down about, because when we do the sport, you sign up for like injuries. It's like you're pushing your body to the max and you're always on that red line of potentially being in the best shape you can be, or like going too far and being injured. And I've been fortunate I haven't had too many, but every time I've had it, I've been like, right, well, this is like part of training as hard as I do. This is like the lowest point now is like I'm injured. I'll get a scan. I'll find out what's wrong, and then from there, everything will be like looking ahead as to where I'm gonna like progress and how it's gonna get better. So I've never really been too down from injuries. It's just a bit frustrating at times. Like I would say Tokyo was the biggest low, like mental health wise I've had, where you build up all this excitement and opportunity and like buzz towards your Olympic Games. You're in like the best shape you've been. It's going to go like amazing. Like everything's led up to this point, and then when it doesn't go as well as you expect, and it goes like the complete opposite, it's like really, really hard to comprehend because you can't turn back the clocks and like rerun the races. You got to like wait like normally 4 years, like this time 3 years to make amends. So
Yeah.
that was probably like a sulk that I had for a little bit too long after that.
I mean, it hurts because you give a shit, doesn't it? Ultimately, that's the thing. It means a lot to you, and you've taken that and shown that you can learn from it and be better and grow, and look at what happened last year.
Yeah,
Like it's come
I
to
think
fruition, isn't it?
that's the way to treat any like any setback or disappointment or like I just saying that question, like any down moment within the sport, it's like not necessarily a bad thing. Like you can always turn it into a good thing. And
Yeah,
yeah, I've always been like very optimistic with any bad moments in the sport that it's like a lesson you can learn or like a chance to reassess and do things differently.
yeah, definitely. I have to say, you've not just because you're here, but genuinely, you've got probably one of the best attitudes to rehab and setbacks and injuries and etc. that I've had with any athlete. He's very businesslike, and Jake just gets it done, man. He's like a robot. He's in there, just gets it boxed off, doesn't complain too much.
No, mate, I'll have a little moan when I. But
Yeah, but
if it's
relatively
set on the
like
program, I'll do it.
exactly.
That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
it
yeah.
is,
I've been
isn't
putting all sorts on there, you know. But yeah, like I mean, a lot of us struggle with that. I do. As you know, I've recently been injured.
Yeah, yeah.
I find it hard to have the bit you enjoy taken away, with
Mm.
running, let's say, and then be left with the rehab and the cross trainer and the bike. And I think your attitude of being able to see the end goal and power through it is commendable, and it that's why you do what you do, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say probably for you, like, well, I know for you, like with your injury recently and stuff, it's like you take for granted the periods where you could do things and you
Yeah,
weren't in pain, and it's like you come
yeah,
back from an injury and then you're like, actually, this is nice that I'm pain free and I can do like for you, like go out for a run. Whereas
yeah,
like you've not been able to do that for the previous few months, like you kind of have a new perspective on it and you take things, yeah, like don't take
yeah.
it for granted as much as you would have done.
Definitely, yeah, and it's like appreciating it, isn't it, and realizing kind of what you have got there.
Yeah.
Question that pops up there that I'm not going to answer in depth, but I'm going to give you a bit of an overview. So, Andy, if you would talk us through the structure of a strength session for a runner, what might it look like? So, we did kind of answer this before. For me, again, concurrent training, tick off everything you need all the time, various doses. But for most people, some sort of hopping and jumping, not a lot to start off with. Just get used to it. Drills are fine for most people for quite a long time. Your A skips, your B skips, pogos, things like that. Some sort of heavy lift, primary lift. So that could be some sort of squat, deadlift, single leg, two-footed. Doesn't matter too much as long as you do it. Try and make sure there's some sort of push. So knee dominant kind of squat, lunge type exercise. Some kind of hinge, something that's hip dominant, glute, hamstring. And make sure you get your local accessory working as well. So your problem areas, your hamstrings, your calves. And that's not just calf raises and hamstring curls, but various velocities and loads. So things like heavy isometrics, like holds for the hamstrings and the calves are really good. And also the higher speed stuff. So you might see things like tantrums or band kicks and stuff for hamstrings can be quite good. So kind of do all those things all at once, but don't overcomplicate it. As long as you're doing some sort of jump in, some sort of heavy strength, and you're ticking off your key areas, your injury areas, your core and your hips, you'd be quite fine. Happy to answer that in more depth at some point, but I don't want to bore everyone to sleep because it is that time of night, isn't it? So there's your whistle stop tour. So in terms of, sorry, man, I'm just going to see what else we've got there. There's loads of good questions, to be honest. I'm not reading that one. 1 second, gonna get you in trouble. Interesting one around running the 800s. So someone who's going to British Masters champs in a few weeks. How do I prepare to win, should I go out fast, steady, or pace for position?
It depends on. I'd say an 800 is like the thing I realized from racing them is you can't really make mistakes in them. You have to have like a pretty clean run, and a lot of it is about not running wide around the bends. So you want to run the shortest lines possible within an eight. Depends what kind of athlete you are. Like if you feel as though you can go out front run strong, like and you train a lot on your own, for example, then it's a tactic that like works for a lot of athletes, especially over 800 because the distance isn't quite as far. You can get away with throwing it like that. Whereas I would always try and like sit in, just because for me it's like my change of pace and my kick is what I would rely on to win a race like that. And by sitting in, you switch off a little bit as well, so you can just relax and don't feel as fatigued when it comes. So yeah, honestly, whatever. If you look back on previous races and you look at when you've had a good race and a bad race, and you analyze exactly what you did in that, and then that's probably the best way to come to conclusions. It's like I've done that many times where I've looked back and been like, actually, when I run like this, I have a much better outcome than this, and you kind of put together your sort of like race strategy that you can try and implement every time, but you've got to be adaptable because you will never get the way you exactly want a race to go out because there's seven other people or maybe more trying to influence that.
Yeah, and that I guess that is it fair to say that comes down to what style of race is championship racing versus a
Yeah,
straight
big time.
final type
Yeah,
thing. And
big time. It's like with us where you're racing like a Diamond League or like a pace race, you know that it's going to be different to a championship race because you just got to ride a train and hope that you're still feeling good with like a lap to go, 200 to go. Whereas in a champs, like it used to be the case that you're running 20 seconds almost slower than your PB, in which case that's just about like tactics. Whereas now it's a game of both, which is tough.
yeah, yeah, and it is. And the last few years has really shown that, hasn't it? The things have
Oh, yeah.
been blown wide open, haven't they?
Yeah, it's crazy. You've now got to be willing to run your fastest ever time after two previous like rounds of running close to your best, which is
Yeah,
it's a big challenge in itself.
it is, and it's really from a spectator perspective, it's amazing. It's really kind of it's made everything so much more interesting now. Not that it wasn't, but like it can be anyone's, can't it? From that alone, you know, the who's still got it in the legs after
Yeah,
two
it makes
fast
like the recovery
races.
stuff has always been like really big. Um, but it's also like you have to focus on that. Like everything has to be perfect now because you're racing like one night and then you've got to come back out the next night and run even quicker. And it's like you can't really afford to like not let any of that stuff slip.
Yeah,
But a lot of it is about like energy conservation. So you've got to conserve now between rounds, whereas before you could afford to treat semi-finals more like a final, where
yeah,
like guarantee you're getting through. Whereas now, if you do that, you potentially will be like still knackered in a couple of days'
yeah,
time.
yeah. And that again, it kind of one semi to the other is can be very different, can't it? As well,
Yeah,
hugely
yeah,
different.
tougher then, isn't it?
Um, question for you there: what is your favorite S&C workout, or what would be one you recommend to someone just starting out? So two questions, I think. But what's your kind of favorite, or what things, I guess?
Yeah, I would say exercise wise, like I love the like plyometric stuff, and I think probably because it's like one of my strengths within the gym is that I'm like quite elastic and like springy. So I love when we had like if we do box jumps and like you're pushing it a little bit and ones that look good probably to people in the gym and good on camera is a nice one. So if you've
Yeah.
got some boxes backed up that look pretty high, it's always nice, isn't it? And yeah, just like
It is for you
hopping.
because you can jump, mate. Not when I do
Nah, you do
it.
all right. I've seen you
Well,
do okay with it.
short legs, haven't I? Looks
Nah,
good.
that's not, you're just a lifter. But yeah, I really do enjoy like PBing in the gym. So if you lift more than you've lifted before, it's like a little buzz, like
Yeah.
similar to running where you PB. I feel as though if you like feel as though you've gotten stronger, that's like a little win in itself. So yeah, I always enjoy that. The stuff I don't enjoy is like we said before, like probably if we do like a core circuit at the end, you're already tired, and if you're like an hour and a half in or whatever, it's like the last thing you want to be doing, and you just almost like
Yeah.
it's good because you rattle through it, but it's always like a hard hit. And then again before that, when we do the isolated stuff, so the calf stuff and the hamstring stuff, for example, it's not glamorous. It's just the stuff you're doing that's important because it's
Yeah.
good for you, but you don't get like the same buzz as if you like jump high on boxes or like you squat heavy or anything like that. It's just the stuff that you have to do.
And I think that you touched on a really important point there, what we talked about earlier with session structure as well. Something I would say, kind of for people starting out, or even if you're not starting out, but don't just do the sexy bits and then chin off the boring stuff at the end, because it's tempting to, but that boring stuff at the end is the stuff that will help keep, well, as much as everything else, keep you in one piece.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, do those kind of local tissue kind of adaptations that, you know, might prevent an injury down the line and stuff. So,
yeah.
um, but yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. It's the big hitters, isn't it? The stuff that kind of you can walk away from thinking that was pretty cool.
Now, the funny thing is with us, like, you'll think you're lifting big, won't you? And then you'll look over and there's actual, like, the weightlifting club are in
Yeah,
and they've got, like,
yeah.
double the weights you're on. And then you're there with your straps on the deadlifts, like, because your wrists and hands are getting sore and they've got, like, nothing. They do it with their pinkies, probably.
Oh
Uh,
man, they can't run a sub 4 mile though, mate. So it's all perspective, isn't it? It's
no, that's what they don't think like that. They probably think, like, look at the little chicken legs on it.
Oh, I don't know about that. What be an S? Well, it says what is an S&T workout you'd recommend to someone just starting out? But maybe a better question, I suppose, there is what kind of things would you say like you'd prioritize S&T for someone who's just getting into it?
Yeah, I guess that's for you, mate. You give that a go.
Yeah, all right, mate. So yeah, as I've sort of said before, like I think basics done well. In terms of plyometrics, so one thing we do tend to see when people will come to us that have started doing S&C, let's say, and then got injured or it's not worked out or whatever, they've probably jumped to the sexy stuff too quickly. So they might have seen, you know, someone like Jake doing like drop jumps or kind of hurdles and big plyometrics and thought, I'll have a bit of that. Um, Problem is, if you do that and you've not built any kind of tolerance up to it, you're going to get injured pretty fast. So with things like plyos, you've got to remember it's not just the muscles, the tissues, it's actually the bone structure itself is getting a big hit. And you've got to allow for that adaptation and allow for that tolerance, unless you want to get shin splints, tendonitis, that sort of stuff really fast. So things like learning to land, so just drop holds, you know, jump in place, stick the landing, just get used to absorbing that force, used to landing, and do that for a good few weeks because the bang for buck is actually there. It looks boring and it's not, you know, you're not going to stick it on Instagram, I guess, but it's really important. And if you do it well, it'll lay the foundation for later. Strength wise, things like your big lifts. So whether it's a back squat, front squat, split squat, some kind of lift, and get really good at it technically. So really nail the technique. Make sure you're getting full range. Make sure everything's in the right place. Get a coach. To be honest, I'm obviously going to say that, but do get a coach at least until you're really comfortable with it. But also don't just stick at lifting an empty bar. Like once you're able to do, you know, a decent amount of reps of any exercise, push the load up. And I think that's somewhere that in running people have struggled because you're not coming from a gym background, an S&C background. People will do like the same workout again and again for years and never actually put any weight on the bar or never increase it. And the body just doesn't work like that. You get diminishing returns on anything exercise wise. So you could do a 20 kilo squat, 10 reps and do that for 6 weeks. By the end of that, you've lost any adaptation, any benefit. All you're doing is just kind of spending an hour in the gym. So put some weight on there, bring the reps down, play around with different variations. You know, don't just stick to a back squat. Mix it up, do split squats, front squats. They all change the dynamics of the exercise, and they're all really beneficial. And then also, again, the things like your core circuits, your glute, you know, the stuff that you were talking about before that people have always done kind of traditionally in your, I know people call them old school circuits and stuff down there. And there is some benefit, but don't worry too much about that. I'd say like maybe do that once a week or kind of squish it at the end of a session. But do the things that you don't already do. So you do, if you run, you're getting loads of local endurance in the legs. So don't then get in the gym and try and do like 20 reps of this and 50 reps of that, and because you're already doing that. So think more strength, more power, more speed, that sort of stuff. But overall, honestly, I would say get a coach or get a program. Start there and see where you get to. Do that for a few months, and you'd be surprised kind of how quickly, as you probably remember, like how quickly those numbers went up.
Yeah, yeah. It's good. It's satisfying, though, isn't it?
Oh
It's like being able to.
yeah,
But even I still now will start with very, very basic like plyos and lifting at the start of like a winter because it's like I've deconditioned over a few weeks of like
yeah,
off season that you can't just jump straight back into where you were. You have to still like start again. And my progression, obviously, it might be a little bit quicker just because I have done enough lifting before, but you got to like swallow your pride a little bit and be willing to accept that you might look like you're lifting nothing, but that's what you have to do to get the tolerance to be able to then put weights on and do the, like you say, like the sexy looking stuff that you can then see the maximum benefits from. But yeah, I think a lot of people will probably be scared of the gym because of that,
yeah,
where it's like do you want to do like there's some exercises we do that look ridiculous to like a normal gym guy that wouldn't know what's going on, but I
Yeah,
think part of that is like don't care what people think when you're in there. They're focused on doing their workout. Just do yours and
100%.
just make sure you tick off every single exercise that you've got set, because otherwise like you're just skipping important bits out and you'll probably end up facing the consequence of that in the future.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. There was actually, whilst we'll start to wrap up soon. Obviously, I'd appreciate going for a little while. There was something earlier about when you started doing S&C. I guess when we started doing it together, probably is a good place to sort of pick up, didn't we? But what were you doing before, and then can you remember what we were doing kind of once you started, and how that sort of felt as to introduce it to your training? Because obviously you were training pretty much, you were full time on then, weren't you? So
Yeah, so I was up in Loughborough before I came down to train at St Mary's where you were. Um, and yeah, I think I'd only done a year probably of actual proper lifting before that. And I think the biggest thing with you was I came to you and we just were able to like move it on a lot. Like I'd had the year and I kind of got used to basic lifting at that point previously. So the stuff I was lifting, I was going in the gym in Loughborough, and like I was saying before, like I think there are athletes in there, like Lindsay Sharp was in there once and she was squatting more than I was. And it's like, you've got to swallow your pride and be like, well, I'm just getting started on my like S&C and weightlifting journey. Therefore, it doesn't matter what someone else is doing. And I think the thing that changed when I came to you was I just became a lot more explosive over the years. And I would say like, as a result, my speed improved. And like, I'm fortunate, I say I'm fortunate, but like one of the things about being able to consistently have like a strong S&C program is that I've had very few major injuries. That's the big thing, is like the robustness you develop from being able to do a full program like that, and from having 3 hits of it a week, which I have, means that although I compromise like a little bit of the mileage, the benefit on my speed and not being able to put the mileage that I do through my legs without injuries has been big over the years.
yeah, definitely, mate, definitely. And it's it's about 7 years now, I think, isn't it? But
Mate, 2016, I think it was, wasn't
uh,
it?
yeah, it was, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, mate, it's interesting to look back at like the data and kind of your jumps and your that sort of stuff in power.
Yeah,
It
I'd say
is
that's one of the things as well, isn't it? For what we do, and I guess what a lot of others do, it's like the same way that you would do like a VO2 max test, a physiology test. I would say like the strength testing is as important, if not
yeah.
in some cases,
Uh,
isn't it?
Definitely from my perspective, because then we use that data, don't we, to kind of structure and build your kind of your program and goals from there. There's some quick ones coming up, so we'll kind of finish with a bit of a speed round, should we, mate? Favorite place to train and why?
I'm very biased because it's like point 0.3 of a mile away from my house, but Bushy Park, just because that's home turf for me. But
Yeah,
like location wise, like we go Flagstaff twice a year, and the scenery and the trails, like even though it's altitude and hurts a lot more and is a bit grim at times, like the scenery of the trails I love.
yeah, definitely, mate. Inspiration? If you had to pick one
Uh,
person?
like I grew up watching like a lot of the like Co vet stuff, but I always loved the way that like Sebco raced. So say if I could be like anyone racing wise, it'd be like him. He's done a lot more probably in the sport still, and that's what I'd love to do. Be able to like yeah, do a little bit more like them.
That legacy.
No, yeah, theirs is crazy though. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, mate. Well, there's still time, isn't there?
Hopefully, mate, there's life in the old
Yeah.
dog yet in there.
Yes, mate. Absolutely. A couple more. You got time, or
Yeah,
you on
yeah,
your
we're
way?
good. We're good.
All right.
Far away.
Track or trail?
Or for running, well, for anything to be fair, track. Like trail is great for like a long run or steady running, but if I had to choose, like I would. So when I finish my racing, and I just potentially, if I still ran like after I'm done competing, I would rather go on the track and bosh out some 200s than I would go on a nice long trail run.
Oh, okay. Fair enough, mate. My shins disagree, but
Mate, I was
yeah.
gonna say you're the complete opposite side. You love like a scenic trail, don't you?
I'm a straight diesel, mate. I've got one speed. That's
Yeah,
it.
just churn it out. Don't you?
Pre-race snack.
The last thing I would eat would be like oh mate, I live off these. They're called like Nutri-Grain, like breakfast bars.
Oh, okay. Like
Uh,
the Kellogg's ones.
yeah, so I've had them since I was probably in school, and there's like quite a lot of athletes I know that have them as well, which is funny because I thought like, I was the only
Really?
guy keeping them alive in the UK. But I have that like 90 minutes before a race, and then I'll have like 3 hours before like a bagel with peanut butter or something, or like Yeah, just before that. But yeah, these things, there's just like a little sugar hit before we race.
Okay. Oh well. To be honest, I do occasionally have them, but I thought you'd have something a bit more high tech than that,
Nah,
mate.
nah, 'cause it's like there's not really much to it apart from what can your stomach take that won't that make you feel sick or like make you feel bloated.
Yeah.
And like the only thing you need is like a little, for our event anyways, like a little energy burst. So that with like some caffeine tablets and I'm good to go.
Yeah, and I think that's actually important, isn't it? The idea of like you're not about to what you eat right before a race isn't going to be what necessarily fuels you. You've already done that, haven't you? That
Mhm.
started days before,
Yeah,
24
like
hours before. Like,
if you're having like a your carb load in your pasta like a few hours before like for a 15, then that's not going to be a good outcome. But
yeah,
from our event as well, it's like probably for 15 down, I would say like if you almost go into the race, if you feel a little bit hungry, like it's not the worst thing. It's like it's better to feel a bit like that than it is to feel like sick or like real bloated and stuff. So yeah, we don't really eat that much before on race day.
yeah, nice, mate. Quick question there about software that you use. So people are asking about Training Peak, Strava, like kind of.
Yeah, so we're on Training Peaks. That's where like my dad will set my stuff. I've never really gone to Strava. Like I'm not that bothered about publicizing like all my training and stuff. Like not that it's a big secret, but I don't need like the kudos from it or anything like that. For me,
Mhm.
it's like as long as the people that need to see it can see it, then I'm good with that. And then yeah, Training Peaks like gets all the data from. I wear like a Polar watch, and that goes through onto my Training Peaks. And then we have an app with you that our gym comes through, doesn't
Yeah,
it? So we just literally, it's actually still on the day the session will come through, and you tick through the exercises as you're going along, give like feedback on it, and then it will tell you like how long we've taken to do it and stuff like that, and how we can like add in how we felt on each exercise. And then there's videos to demo each one in case we don't know.
yeah, definitely. If anyone's interested in that as well, a little plug. There's a group program going at the minute on there. You've got a 7 day free trial link in bio, I think, but let me know if it's not. Um, Question just popped up there. Should youth athletes be using weights? Yes. So for a long time, there was a big stigma around kids shouldn't use weights and problems with growth plate injuries and that sort of stuff. Not really a problem as long as you do it safely. And by that, I mean, don't go for massive weights over technique. Once kids can move well, you can progress them just as much as as an adult. Just be sensible, think long term. Get, as we talked about earlier, learn the techniques really well. Get super competent. Have a coach, and just focus on the future. So training to train is a good way to look at it. You're earning the right to then go and lift heavy later on. But yeah, absolutely you can. And if you want an example of that, look at gymnasts. You know, they're lifting way and above what we'd ever lift in the gym through their shoulders, through their legs when they're jumping, landing, um, all the time. So yeah, absolutely they should. So let's see if there's any more before we get away. I appreciate there is quite an important football match on. I think.
I
Um,
don't know what I don't know what the score is actually.
I've not looked yet. I'm waiting because I'll be upset when I find out that we're getting battered. For nothing, that's the funny rates. Okay. I think that's pretty much it, mate. If anyone's got any last minute ones you want to chuck on there, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Huddle flying in now.
Mate, they're coming in fast, aren't they? Let's have a look. 2-0. 2-0 Wolves. I'd be joking. Probably not. Uh, uh, is it worse than any upper body training? That's an interesting one, to be fair. Um, yeah, it is, to be fair, but it's not what, this is my philosophy, so don't take it as read, but it's worth doing, but it's not worth doing all the time to a massive extent. You could get bogged down in things like the sling theory and kind of the contribution of arms and stuff, but getting massive isn't going to help. Hopefully that kind of answers it. We do a bit, don't we? To be fair, we'll chuck a bit. It's more kind of in the winter and stuff, but
Yeah, yeah.
you know what I
It's
mean.
it's it's mainly not just not being weak, isn't it? I would say with our upper body stuff, it's like maintaining some level of it so that yeah, you're like good enough, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. There's one that. Oh, that's interesting. How many Pro Plus do you take before a race?
So I don't. I used to take Pro Plus, but now I take it's like a health span elite like caffeine one, which is the same amount, but like
Batch
four.
tested.
I have
Yeah.
like four, yeah, so it's batch tested instead. So it's like four, which is the equivalent of, I think it's the equivalent of like a double espresso. So it's not a huge amount, and I drink a lot of coffee anyway, so I didn't used to take anything, and if anything, I felt like, yeah, just like a drop. Whereas now it just the adrenaline gets me more pumped, I'd say, than the caffeine.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, it's good. It's good for clearing you out before your race as well. That's the other benefit of it.
Get on the start line later. I'm
Yeah,
a big fan of
yeah,
that, mate. I can't disagree. If you don't mind answering this one, someone's just asking about the operation on your nose and how's it
yeah.
helping with your breathing, your air capacity and stuff. When we've
Mainly
both
like
had it done, haven't we? But
yeah, one of
um,
the things that so many people said with it is like, oh, it looks the same. It's like I wasn't getting it like chopped off. Like it's still this big old
disappointing,
monstrosity.
isn't
But
it?
I know I should have. I was hoping I'd wake up with a little ski slope, but sadly not. But yeah, it was something I meant to do for a while. And it was only when I got like COVID a couple times over the years that it would really just feel congested in one nostril, and then it took like months and months for it to clear. And then
Mm,
I was training a lot of the time with those breathe right strips just to help give
yeah,
me a bit more like opening in that one nostril that was a bit more restricted. And I said at the end of last season I was going to have it done, and then because like the season went like as like quite well, I was like I don't want to take a week of holiday away. I want to be able to like go out and like on holiday like celebrate a little bit and relax. So I
it's
kind of
fair
forgot
enough, isn't
about
it?
it. Yeah, and then
Mm,
when I had this summer of not racing, I was like, well, why would I not go and do it now? And it was traumatic just because I bled a lot more than I thought I was gonna. And it's now like pretty good where it's probably still not 100% healed and there's a little bit of inflammation still, but my nose doesn't like collapse in as it used to when I try and inhale. So
yeah,
not even probably the same for you where it's not even like performance wise, like it won't necessarily help me race better, but it will help me sleep
it's,
better hopefully and
yeah.
just
To be
relax.
honest, mate, I was like that. Yeah, just day to day, like you wake up in the middle of the night with like a dry throat and stuff, don't you?
Yeah, it's
And
just the quality of like everything else around it is what I've done it for, and it's like when you feel like you got a cold, you're a bit congested, it won't feel like you literally can't breathe through your nose. It will feel like a lot more free and yeah, a lot better hopefully.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, mate. Mate, that was awesome. I think we'll probably wrap it up because we've been on for an hour now, and I appreciate. Yeah, it's nearly your bedtime, isn't it, mate? You got your pajamas
Oh
on,
man, I
ready
should
to.
have been in bed by 8. This is a real treat, Andy. So thank you for keeping me up
Me
so
too,
late.
mate. Yeah, two noisy kids that'll be waking me up in the next few hours, I imagine. So, thanks for that, mate.
No,
Thanks for everyone that joined us as
yeah.
well. And if you did like it, leave a little note in the comments. Let us know if you want us to do it again or whatever. Anything else you'd like to know. Much appreciated. And
Yeah, I was gonna say there's probably I'll try and at some point do like a YouTube video with you, Andy, where we'll like go into a bit more depth about yeah, like my structure of my S&C with you and like your philosophy a bit more. Um,
yeah,
yeah, which I'm sure we can make that happen, can't we?
definitely, mate. Yeah, that'd be good. We can probably put a bit more meat on the bones, can't we, in the
Oh
video?
yeah, I'm
Um,
still too
that's
skinny, mate.
it, mate. Oh, no, I don't know. I've got some pretty good filters, mate. We'll sort that out. Don't you worry. Um,
No, mate, it's been good.
thank you, mate. Much appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching as well, and we'll see you soon.
See you in a bit, mate.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
All right.